All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and get things kicked off here. Today's webinar is really going to be centered around integrations and automations. What I mean by that, when we talk about integrations, we're talking about connecting platforms to each other. And for a long, long time, that process has been pretty difficult, right? It's been filled with prerequisite information that you need to know, right? You need to be a developer, or you need to have a background in computer science. And those days are kind of behind us now. Of course, there's still some benefits to running your integrations that way. There's different capabilities that you can get out of them. But for a lot of organizations, especially ones that use Outfield, we can do a lot of those integrations through a platform called Zapier. And I'm going to get into all of that stuff here in a few moments. But before I do that, I did want to introduce myself as your presenter today. My name is Michael Perlberg. I am the Director of Support and Implementation here at Outfield. So I primarily work in our customer success department, right? That department is all centered around you guys, right? Our customers, and the success of you as individuals, as organizations. And we do a lot of things that go into that, right? We answer support tickets when they come through. We provide recommendations and ways that you could potentially be getting the most out of the Outfield platform. Oops, let me go back there. And so, a big piece of that is education. And that's really what today's centered on. So this webinar is all around education. And, one of the best ways I think to learn is by asking questions. So if you do have any questions as we're going through the webinar, I'll be making sure to check the chat. Please just type in any questions that you might have, and I'll either get to them as they come up, or if it's something that is requires a longer explanation, we'll hold off towards the end. But yeah, guys, really appreciate your time today. We're gonna get into things. So you may be wondering what Zapier actually is and what integrations can do, right? They're in there so that you can save time, you can save effort, and of course, with all of that, we're going to be saving money, right? And when we automate tasks, we're literally letting the computer or the machine do a lot of that work for us. And so Zapier has created a solution that is really intuitive, it's low, and it's no code, meaning that you don't have to have any of that prerequisite information around computer science or development, or the scary word that, or it's really an acronym, APIs, right? That's how a lot of technology works. And what we're going to be going through today is how you can set up your own integrations on Outfield, or using Outfield and other platforms. I've got a few shown over here on the right. These are probably some logos that you're familiar with, right? We've got Gmail, we've got Outlook, we've got Slack and Salesforce and QuickBooks Online. All of these are tools that, based off of conversations that I've had with customers and potential clients, these are a lot of the platforms that you use on a regular basis. And so in terms of actually making any of these integrations work, you have to know a little bit of background on the setup, right? And so Zapier is super simple. It consists of trigger actions and actions, right? So I always like to think of this with an analogy, right? We think of a car. When you take your keys to your car and you put them in the ignition and you turn it, right? That's what we're going to think of as our trigger. And all the other stuff in your car that turns on, those are going to be your actions. So your radio, your AC, your, the engine itself, right? When you turn that key, that's your trigger, and the resulting actions, because that trigger actually took place, all those actions are going to occur as well. And that's really how Zapier works. And I've got a brief example over here on the right. We're going to walk through some different examples as well throughout the presentation, but this one's pretty simple, right? There's my Siri going off. Sorry about that, guys. So when a lot of customers are going to be using HubSpot to capture leads, right? Whether that's on their website, if it's through, a campaign that they might be running, we're going to be capturing information from that HubSpot form, right? When that HubSpot form captures those details, a new customer is going to be created. No human touch points are taking place there, right? It just happens in HubSpot. So it's going to happen in Outfield, right? Now, of course, within Outfield, when a field rep actually goes out and visits with a location, you might want to get notified of that, right? Now, Outfield does have some built-in notifications, but they don't go to the platform of your choice, right? And that's really where Zapier can come into play. So I want that alert to get sent over to Slack. Again, that rep, they go in, they do that check-in. The record of that check-in is going to get sent over to really any platform that they're choosing. In this case, it's going to be Slack as a message, right? And we're actually going to walk through that exact example a little bit later on. But before we do that, I wanted to introduce you to somebody here who a lot of you on the call may be familiar with. If you're not, this is Michael Scott. He is the world's best boss, and he runs a field team consisting of, the usual gang. We got Jim Halpert, Dwight, Stanley, Phyllis. They're all members of Michael's team. They're going out and they're doing their job, right? They're meeting with clients. They are doing checks within stores. They're having conversations, doing cold calls, meeting with existing clients, you name it, the whole gamut of what typical organizations on Outfield are doing. That's what Michael Scott is going to be doing. Now, it's easy to summarize all of that, right? And we know what Michael Scott is doing, but what is Michael Scott using, right? He's using these tools that we have over here on the right, which again, a lot of you may be familiar with. We've got Outfield, of course, that's his field sales CRM, field marketing CRM. We've got Slack that he uses for communication. Salesforce takes care of a lot of the money, right? And tracking inside sales activities, but not necessarily their outside activities. And so Google Forms are there to capture leads. QuickBooks Online, that's where he does all of his accounting and invoicing, and then Google Calendar for scheduling and staying on top of what actually needs to get completed, right? So I do want to take this time, guys, if y'all have other platforms that you're using that obviously aren't listed here, please throw them into the chat. I would love to learn more about what our users use as different platforms. And with Zapier, there's a lot available. There's over 3,000 different platforms that you can integrate with, and I think it's quite a repository, but it's not going to get everything. And so I throw it into the chat and let's see what everybody's using. All right, so we have Chris. Chris uses HubSpot. She also uses Xero for her accounting. Xero is on the Zapier store, which is fantastic. So you'd be able to connect your books with Outfield, right? If Outfield, you go in and mark a deal and create an order, and that triggers an invoice to get created, you can actually have that get sent over to Xero, much like how you would do with QuickBooks Online. Looks like David Jones uses route optimization. Bob Henry uses Gmail tasks a lot, creating tasks which links to the appropriate email chain. I think there might be a solution for that, Bob. So we're going to go through Zapier and we're going to see some of the different things that they have available that you can integrate with. All right, so using Outfield as a trigger, right? Again, triggers, this is what kicks off that integration, right? When something happens in Outfield, I want that resulting action to take place in another platform. And so I've got a few examples here, and I'm going to walk through one in more depth, but just at a high level. Let's say you wanted to get notifications to a Slack channel. A lot of companies, a lot of organizations use Slack for communication, which is great. That's what keeps you guys in the loop and on top of things that need to get done. Use the tool that works best for you. And so if you wanted to get a Slack message whenever a form is completed on Outfield, that's easy. And that's actually the example that we're going to walk through with. But a lot of people use calendars, right? They don't use the Outfield calendar all the time. And, as many benefits as it has in there, some organizations are more comfortable working off of a Google Calendar or an Outlook calendar, or maybe they use a scheduling service like Calendly, which is very popular in the software space. That's all possible through Zapier. On the invoice side, and having your invoices that you create in Outfield getting sent over to QuickBooks Online, easy peasy, right? And there's other platforms that work just like this. We've got Xero, like I was mentioning Chris's use case, right? She uses Xero. She doesn't use QuickBooks Online. There's an option for that. Zoho, Salesforce, these are all different platforms that you can share invoices in between. And as what I'm showing here is not everything, right? There is quite a few things that you can leverage throughout the Zapier platform. And I see we got a message from Bob. I'm unable to use it with QuickBooks since ours is hosted remotely. Yes, that is something that you'll need to consider, right? So QuickBooks Online is what we're able to connect with through Zapier. The locally hosted, or I can't remember, I think it's like an on-premise version of QuickBooks. Unfortunately, that is not connected to Zapier. You would have to switch over to the QuickBooks Online, which there is some tutorials out there specifically through QuickBooks where they make that process as seamless as they can. So that might be something that you want to check out, Bob. So let's actually get into what one of these examples looks like. And we're gonna use this Outfield to Slack example. And what I want everybody to focus in on here is how easy it is to set all this stuff up. So I'm going to switch over to my browser, and we're on Zapier. Zapier does require you to have an account. There are free accounts through Zapier. There's also paid accounts that give you access to a little bit more higher volume of integrations that you want to be running. But for our purposes today, I'm just going to go in and create a Zap. Right, I'm going to click this big black button here in the upper left corner and click Create Zap. Now, again, we're going from Outfield over to Slack, right? And so my trigger action needs to be Outfield. And once this actually loads up, we'll be able to see that. Just give it a second. There we go. So the first step is choosing that trigger, right? So I'm just going to type into the search bar Outfield, and that's going to bring up our early access Outfield right here. So I'm just going to click into 1.3.0. So I've selected Outfield as my trigger. Now I need to choose my event, right? Now, when I choose my event, it's all going to be things that I hope look familiar to everybody who's on the call, right? New activity, new account, new deal, calendar events, incompleted tasks that have been created. These are all trigger events that you can use to start your Zaps. Now, for our purposes, because I want my Slack team, my team that's on Slack, to get notified of when something happens on Outfield, I'm going to choose a new activity. So when I do that, it says, give me this continue button, click into it. And next thing I need to do is actually sign in to my Outfield account, right? I'm just going to click on this because I've already signed into it. It's going to show up here. But if not, it would just bring up a little screen. You put in your Outfield login and you're all set, right? So I'll choose that account right there, Michael Perlberg plus Mike Scott. Click continue, and now we're into setting up our trigger. And a lot of actually everything that we see on this page is optional, right? So if I left everything blank, it would basically say any new activity. This is a note, a deal, a check-in, a meeting, anything that occurs. I want to get that thrown over to Slack. That is a bit too much for me and my team, right? And so maybe I want to dial it down. Maybe I just want to see check-ins, and more specifically check-ins with completely new clients, right? So I'm going to go here and type in cold call. So this is actually going to pull my cold call form visits that I'm doing. So any visit that we have with a totally new prospect, somebody that I'm looking to qualify perhaps, I'm going to fill out that form. That's actually going to be the start of my trigger, right? So we'll go here, click continue. That's all set up. And the next thing that it's going to give us is the ability to test out that trigger. Zapier is great because every step of the way you're checking it and you're balancing it out, right? And so we're going to test this trigger out just to make sure that it's working. And it looks like it found our activity. So an activity was found in my account. Guys, all this information that we see down below, I know it looks a bit overwhelming and maybe even confusing, but this is all the data points that are tied to that visit, the city that it occurred in, the zip code that it occurred in. Here is the name of the account that we visited, right? And so I'm pulling all of that information through Zapier, and I can actually use that to do my resulting actions, right? So I'm just going to click continue here, and that's going to lock in that trigger step. Now we've got that trigger. It's all set up here. It's got that little green check mark on it. Next thing that we're going to do is set up an action, right? Now, remember our action app that we're going to be working with, it's going to be Slack. So we're going to type in Slack here. It's going to find it from our list. And we're just going to go choose an action event, right? So I actually want to send one of my Slack channels, one of my group messages, a confirmation that a visit actually occurred, right? So we're going to say, send this channel a message, hit continue. and we got to sign into my Slack account, right? That's all really all it is. It's just signing into your accounts. That's probably the hardest thing about creating a Zapier integration, is just finding all those passwords and logging into your different platforms. But once you do it, it saves it all in there. So we've chosen my Slack account that we're going to be working with. I'm going to hit continue there. Now is the fun stuff. I get to set up that action. So channel, right? That's the first option. We're gonna say this is gonna go into my general channel. This is like the full team, everybody's on it within my Slack channel. This is where we communicate quite a bit. So I'm gonna say this message is gonna go to the general channel, and now I get to create what that message looks like. And so what I'm gonna do here is we're gonna go down here to our insert data section. This is all the different fields that we're pulling in from that check-in. Right. So, I could scroll through here and find certain things, or I could just search for it up at the top and type in user. That's going to bring in my username. So we'll just say Jim Halpert. It's going to go up here. Notice how it's just implementing these texts into our message text. So I could say Jim Halpert just checked into, and then I want to put in the name of our client. So I'm going to go down here and type in contact. There's contact's name right there, Carlos's car store, right? So Jim Halpert just checked into Carlos's car store. And I can actually pull information from that form, that cold call form that was completed, right? And typically in cold calls, we're asking qualifying questions. Are you happy with your current provider? Are you looking to make a change? What type of volume might you be looking at? Low, medium, high revenue customers, all sorts of stuff like that. And we can actually pull in our form results, right? And so I'm just going to go down here. We'll put in a little message text. They are currently, I'm going to look for my form information here. I'm just going back and forth between this insert data and my actual message text here. And if I scroll down, we see our itemized form results, right? So what customer tier do they fall into? That's a high revenue customer. What's their satisfaction level with their current supplier? So I'll just implement that. They are blank with their current supplier. I'm kind of just customizing what this message is actually going to look like on my Slack channel, right? So I've put all of that in there, guys. You can throw as much information into this as you want. I'm just going to keep it simple for the sake of time, right? I want to be able to show you all some other things, and so I'm just going to make that simple message there. There's all sorts of other information. I can name my bot, so we'll just name this message from Outfield, right? Go in. That's our bot name. I could include attachments. I could attach images via URLs as well. I mean, there's a lot of different information, but I'm just going to keep it simple. You don't really have to mess with every single thing in this unless you want to, right? But we're going to click continue there. And that basically finishes up our action. The last thing to do is actually test it out and make sure that it works. So you could either test and review, or you could do test and continue. Because I'm not actually going to turn this on for my team, I'm just doing this for an example purpose. I'm going to test and review. And there is my message. I'm not sure if you heard it come through, but if we switch over to my Slack, there is that message, right? So that's a message from Outfield. It just came in 11:23 a.m. Jim Halpert just checked into Carlos's car store. They're currently very happy with their current supplier, right? And so imagine the different messages and notifications that you could throw into your Slack channel. And again, Slack's not the only thing that you can do this with, right? You can use so many different actions like the ones I've talked about a little bit to have information going into Outfield, straight from the source, your team, your field team, going into other platforms that maybe other members of your team who aren't on Outfield are present on, right? That's very common with Slack channel. You might have your entire company shown on Slack, but just your field team on Outfield. Now you can actually share information with them a little bit more seamlessly through integrations like this. Now, as I'm, kind of wrapping things up here, is please throw any questions that you may have into the chat, and I can always tackle those, answer them. If you think that this is a helpful integration, throw that in there as well. I want to get some feedback from everybody who's on the call. So as you guys are typing in those messages, I'm going to transfer back over here to our keynote. And just summarize, right? So we were using Outfield as a trigger there, using that to start all of our integrations. Again, these are just a few examples: Slack, Google Calendar, QuickBooks. I would say these top two, the Google Calendar and Slack notifications, are probably one of the more popular ones, right? Just they're so easy to set up. And very, very useful for anybody who struggles to maintain that level of transparency across all of your different platforms, right? And have things communicate between one another. So that is using Outfield as a trigger. Pretty easy, guys. If you ask me, I'm always open to feedback and open to answering questions, but let's look at it the other way around, right? We're going to use Outfield as an action here, meaning I'm going to have something occur in another platform totally separate from Outfield, and I want that information to get shot over to Outfield, right? And we got a few examples here. Google Forms. I'm going to actually use that as our example today, but imagine a client of yours, a potential client, goes to your website, they fill out a form, and you want that information to get shot over to Outfield, creating a new customer, a new place, a new contact, whatever it might be. That's possible. Salesforce, a new customer gets created in Salesforce, and you want your databases to be more in sync than they are today. You can have that new customer automatically get created in Outfield as well. Similar apps that do this, Pipedrive, right? Very common inside sales CRM. Zoho is just a behemoth of a CRM. And HubSpot, great for email marketing, automations, campaigns, stuff like that. Great for capturing, lead information and creating customers from there. Google Sheets, right? It's just about everybody's favorite friend in the business space, right? It's more connected than an Excel spreadsheet, but it's on the cloud, right? So it can speak to all sorts of different platforms, including Outfield through Zapier. So that one really, it gives you a wide range of things that you can do just by manipulating a database in your Google spreadsheet there. So let's get a little bit deeper with this action, right? We're going to take a look at connecting a Google form to Outfield. Now, I've done a little pre-work here and getting some stuff set up for you guys. So I actually created this basic form, right? And for the purposes of today, I wanted to keep it simple. And so we've got this form. See, we did have a message come through from Matt. Let me just read this real quick. Click the accounts on the out. Matt, I'm going to get back with you. That is a question kind of separate from this conversation, but I'll follow up with you, Matt, following this presentation. All right, guys. So back to this form, right? We're filling out this information. I'm just going to make it simple. We're just going to fill out Outfield headquarters as my example company. This is something that somebody on your website might complete, right? We'll put in our address is going to be 1250 Wood Branch Park Drive. City's Houston, H-Town. Our state is Texas, and our zip code is going to be 77079. All right, phone number, we'll throw this in there as well, just so you guys get the full experience. And by the way, feel free to give this number a call. This is our support line. If you ever have any questions, 832-942-8672. Email, we'll just put support@outfieldapp.com. And we're going to submit this. Now with Google Forms, whenever you submit one of your Google Forms, it is actually going to get populated into a spreadsheet, a Google spreadsheet, like shown here, just got populated there. That's just a Google thing, right? But it's very important that I cover this because our Zap is actually going to be pulling from this spreadsheet. And so if we head back over here to Zapier, I'm just going to restart this whole process, right? We're going to go in and we're going to make one of our Zaps, right? So I click this Create Zap button. Apologies for the slower Wi-Fi. I guess this is what happens when you run a big webinar through your 10-year-old MacBook Pro. But if we go here, we're going to choose our trigger, guys. It's going to be Google Forms, right? So I'm going to type in Google Forms here. I'm going to select that app from the list, and we choose our trigger event. So a new response in a spreadsheet, or you could do an updated response in that spreadsheet as well. That might be something you want to do if you have people going in and constantly changing information through that spreadsheet that's connected to your Google form. In our case, we're going to keep it simple, new response in spreadsheet, and we're going to continue, right? So whenever something new goes into that Google form, that's what's going to start my action. And so we're just going to choose my Google Forms account there, hit continue, and we're going to choose our spreadsheet, right? And so I named that spreadsheet contact information, and our worksheet from that is just going to be the one page that we have in there, form responses number 1. Okay, so we'll click continue, set up my trigger. We're going to test it out just to make sure everything is working properly. And looks like we found it. There's Outfield HQ 1250 Wood Branch. I got all my information. This one's really simple, right? There's not a ton of additional info other than the time and date stamp that we actually captured this information on. Everything else was inputted by a potential client, right? So we'll continue through this, and we're going to set up our action. Now, again, our action in this case is going to be Outfield, because I want to take that form and I want to create a customer with it. So our action event, here's all the different types of actions that you can do. You can create deals, accounts, activities, new tasks, events, deals with orders and line item support in there. But we're just going to go in and choose create account. This is like a lead form, right? We're creating new things from that form. We're going to continue through it. Again, I'm going to have to sign in to my Outfield account. We're going to use Michael Scott's there. Click continue. And again, this is the fun stuff, right? We get to map everything out. So our account name, we're just going to pull it from that list of data. So we're going to do company name. That's going to be Outfield headquarters there. Our account type, this is just a standard thing within Outfield. We want to create this as a place. If I was capturing contact information, like actual people, not just businesses, but the names of people, I might want to create them as persons, right? But for our case, we're just going to create these as places. Title is optional. All of this information, guys, is really optional, but since we have it, we're going to populate it. So street address, this is going to be that street address from our Google form. City, we're going to pull Houston in there. And just bear with me, this may not be the most exciting thing to look at, but it is important, right? This whole process of mapping out your information. We're going to map our zip code to the postal code. Country, don't really need it. Latitude and longitude, don't really need it. Phone, we definitely captured that. So we're going to pull in our phone number. We are going to pull in our email address as well. And that's really it. So I could pull in website, I could pull in latitude, longitude, country information as well if I really needed to, but I'll just quickly review it. Got my name, my address, city, state, zip, phone, email, we're good. So we're going to click continue here. And we're going to try sending this account over to Outfield. So we're going to test and review it. Looks like that test was successful. Let's go over here to Outfield and we'll give it a refresh. And there's Outfield headquarters, right? So it created it pretty quickly. It was created on August 17th, 2021. Got my email, got my phone number in there. If I click into Outfield headquarters here, it gets geocoded. And guys, this is a new customer on Outfield. Once you have these integrations set up, you really don't have to go back in and mess with it, right? That's just going to be set up so you can forget about it. Any time that form gets completed, a new customer is going to get created here. So just eliminates busy work from the jump, right? Instantly. I don't know how much time somebody might spend creating new accounts in Outfield, but let's say it's 20 minutes throughout the week, right? They spend 20 minutes of their entire week. That's 20 minutes that you just got back. Over the course of a month, you're saving over an hour, and that kind of can pay for itself, right? It pays off Zapier. It just gives you that time back in your pocket, and so that's a fantastic use case for using Outfield as triggers. But again, guys, the possibilities are kind of endless. You use your imagination. Look at the different stack of platforms that you might be using, and think of it. Hey, how can I connect this with Outfield? Can I remove some of this busy work off of my own plate? And by the way, guys, I'm using all of these examples as, using Outfield as the trigger, using Outfield as the action. You don't even need to use Outfield, right? I mean, you have your Google form, talking to your Google Calendar, talking to your Salesforce, talking to your whatever. Doesn't always have to include Outfield, but since I'm with Outfield, I'm going to use that as a really good example. And so that brings me to my next point here, which is not really integrations, but I'm going to call these automations, right? We've gotten a lot of requests over the past few years. Hey, can we do this after a check-in happens? Can I make X, Y, and Z occur? And I wish that we had unlimited resources and we could build all that awesome stuff and amazing requests that our users have. But this actually gives you the ability to create some of those on your own. And so we're going to be using Outfield as a trigger, and we're going to be using it as an action. So it's kind of making wouldn't call it quite a circular loop, but it is making things a little bit faster within Outfield. And so I got a few examples here. Again, creativity is key here when you're thinking of different things that you can automate. For me, I chose a few that I actually use on a regular basis, right? So when a new task, or I want to create a new task, something for me to complete, after I go out and visit with one of my clients, right? And really the purpose of this is to set up those auto reminders for actually following up with a customer. On Outfield, you have to create a place, and for that place, you have to create a deal if you're wanting to put it into your pipeline. This is the second option here, something that can quickly automate that process for you. When new customers get added to Outfield, you can have them automatically get created as a lead within your pipeline. And then trickling down here into calendars, right? You want to set up a follow-up calendar event. Maybe you want to schedule out your follow-up without even thinking about it, right? I want to visit this account in 30 days, right? You could set up an integration that automatically creates that calendar event for you after you visit one of your clients, one of your customers. Now, for our purposes, we're going to focus in on this top one, right? Creating a new task after a check-in occurs. And so we're going back to it, guys. We're going back to Zapier. We're going to pull this up, and I'm just going to restart the whole process over again. And again, we're going to click that Create Zap button here. All right, so our trigger, this is easy, right? Our trigger is going to be Outfield, so we'll just type it into that top list, hit Outfield 1.3.0, and we're going to choose our trigger event. So think about the process flow, right? I'm a field rep, I'm going out, I'm visiting with my customers. So that's going to be our trigger, right? When I visit with one of my clients. And so there's going to be a new activity. Anytime a new activity is created, that's going to be our triggering point, right? So we're going to set that, click continue. As you've seen all this stuff before, I'm just confirming my account here. Click continue, setting up our trigger. Let's say I only want to create tasks for very specific things. We'll go back to that form. We're going to choose our cold call form out of our list here. Activity type, I'll keep it simple with check-in. You can also filter down by team member and do each of these zaps for a specific person. Because I want this to be more universal for my team, I'm leaving this team member field optional, right? I'm just leaving it blank there. That means it's going to happen for everybody on the team. We're going to click continue, and we're going to test it out, right? Again, this is just going to pull in the most recent activity that fits all of those criteria. It's going to be that same activity that we did with Carlos's car store, right? And so activity worked, we can continue on, and now we're going to set up our action, which for us, I'm just going to search up Outfield here. We're going to go in and create an incomplete task, right? This is like setting up a to-do list item or a reminder, a follow-up that you need to complete. So we're going to create that incomplete task using our trigger. Sign in once again. And now we get to set up our action. So our task title could be something like follow up. I'm just typing this in. Any text I put in here is going to get transferred over through the Zap. So we're going to follow up with, and we're going to use our smart inserting data tool down here to insert the contact name. So in this case, we're going to be visiting with Carlos's car store. But guys, this is just like a placeholder, right? It's going to use information from the previous trigger step to populate this whole box with, right? So we're going to follow up with Carlos's car store there. That's going to be the general title of that task. our due date and our due time, this is where it gets a little interesting, right? Because the way Zapier works with time elements, you really need to pay attention to what you're doing here. And so for our due date, this is when I want that task to actually get complete. I'm going to go down here and we're going to search for our created at date, which means the date that this activity that we did with Carlos's car store, when it was actually created. And so I'm just going to type in create. Here is our created at column. It's just a timestamp, which, for a lot of people that might look just like total gibberish, but it is the date that it occurred, the time zone that it occurred, and the actual time. So it's very, very proper, so to speak. It's the right way to throw in that address column. Now, I don't want my task to be due at the same time that I created the activity, right? Maybe I want to give myself 1 or 2 hours. And so what I can do here is right at the end of that timestamp here, I'm just going to put in a plus sign and put 1H. That means I'm going to add an hour to that timestamp. So anytime something gets created in Outfield in an hour, I'm going to have a follow-up that needs to get sent out. And so we've got our due date and our due time there. Team member, this is important. We're actually just going to pull from our previous activity because I want this to be for all of my team members, right? I could choose a specific person here, but for us, we're going to do custom. And I'm just going to type in user. So here's our username. That could work, but I like to use the ID, right? So we're going to go in and say user ID there as 9690. Account ID, again, this is also going to be something that we pull from our insert data, right? Because it's all information that was tied to the original check-in that Jim Halpert actually did. And so for our account ID, I'm going to type in contact. That's how it's labeled in Zapier. Do contacts ID, right? And this ID number, that's just their Outfield ID, right? Because I want to pull in that information. It's the most reliable way to actually connect anything, is using those Outfield IDs, those internal IDs that can actually be used externally as well. So our notes here, we could type in whatever we want. Make sure to follow up with, and then we'll just insert that name there. I mean, there's a ton of different things that you could throw in there, make it really customizable and robust, so to speak. But I'm going to keep it simple, right? Make sure to follow up with Carlos's car store. We're going to click continue there. And we're going to test it out, make sure that it actually works. Test was successful. An incomplete task was sent to Outfield. We'll go over to my list here. This is actually Jim Halpert's task list. And there is that follow-up with Carlos's car store. Jumped in there right when I needed it, right? And so it's just a really quick way to automate things that maybe you don't want to do yourself, right? Obviously, all this stuff that we're doing, up until just recently, right? Everybody was going in and doing these actions themselves, taking that time to automate various things, non-automated, right? And so that's just something that you'll really want to keep in mind, things that can take a lot off of your plate as managers, right? There's so many different things, so many moving pieces, and this is something that can make your life a little bit easier. All right, so let's come back over here. And I just wanted to show this screen for everybody. This is not nearly all of the different platforms that you can integrate with, right? I mean, there's a variety of things. MailChimp is on here if you guys do any automated messaging campaigns, if you're capturing leads through Facebook, if you are using Microsoft Teams to communicate. I mean, those are all different platforms. They have over 3,000 different platforms that you can integrate with, and that list is growing. I think last year it was at 2,000, and so they've made quite a bit of an increase here in the last year. But that just means that it's getting bigger, and more platforms are going to be added to it, I hope, and everybody can start leveraging these connections to the platform. And so you may be wondering how to actually make this all happen. This last slide here is, one, it's a thank you for everybody taking the time to sit in on today's session, but also wanted to introduce you to some people, right? We've got Barbara, we've got Eric, we've got Carlos. These are just other members of the Outfield team and what makes our team actually go. And so if you're interested in leveraging this Zapier technology, leveraging some of the integrations and automations that we have available, all you need to do is send over an email to hello@outfieldapp.com, and we'll get right in touch with you, right? There's a little bit of a process that we like to go through, some questions that we like to ask, because we want to put you guys in the best position to succeed as an organization. And there's a lot of value that's tied in with integrations and automations, and we want to be there to assist. But again, really appreciate everybody's time. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.